Hello there. Welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week I'm going to take a deep dive look into the Mandalorian Season 3 episode titled The Return. Before we get started, I'm inviting you to join the conversation with us. We can be found on Twitter and Hive at Force Ghost Pod. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok just by searching Force Ghost Conversations. Also, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your listening site of choice. Plus, Force Ghost Conversations is now live on Patreon. If you're a fan of the podcast and would like to consider pledging your support, there will be a link in the episode description for you to check out the various tiers offered. Finally, please be sure to check out our TeePublic store to buy some Force Ghost Conversations merchandise. And without further ado, it is time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost Conversations. Okay, everyone, welcome back to the podcast. And boy, what an episode this week from The Mandalorian. What a way to close out Season 3 of this incredible show and to look forward to what we've got coming in the future. I'm excited to break it all down. But first, we have some news and some, general house back of house work, logistical, administrative stuff. You'll hear about it in just a second. But first, let's get to the news this week, of course, which is our Cloud City Gossip segment. We have some new news after Star Wars Celebration, which is almost unfathomable to believe after having a full litany of Star Wars Willow, not necessarily Willow, but Indiana Jones based, all the Lucasfilm stuff, news that we got from that wonderful convention just a week ago. Are we a week out from Star Wars Celebration at this point? 2 weeks? How's the time flown by? I can't imagine how fast it's gone for me personally. But yeah, we have some news this week. And first, as you probably all know, all episodes of The Mandalorian are now streaming on Disney Plus. If you missed any episode or want to binge watch the entire season 3 yourself, well, now is your chance. Additionally, you can also go back and re-listen to the entire Force Ghost Conversations catalog of episodes, looking deeply, looking very closely at all of Season 3. Of course, you know the episodes if you've been listening to the show a lot, but if not, go back and check out those other episodes. We really appreciate it there. Also, May 4th is just around the corner, and you know what that means. The Star Wars Young Jedi Adventures and Visions Volume 2 will premiere on Disney Plus that day. Be sure to check out the trailers on YouTube now and get excited as we will be covering both here on the podcast. Additionally, Forrest Whitaker confirmed this week that he will be returning as Saw Gerrera in Season 2 of Andor. Although this news comes as no surprise, I'm looking forward to seeing where the character goes as we get closer to the Rogue One time slot. Now, Lucasfilm has not officially confirmed that this is true, but this did come from the actor himself, so I definitely will take that as a confirmation for sure. Finally, Volume 2 of Joseph Shirley's score for The Mandalorian Season 3 is now available on streaming platforms. I personally think that he knocked it out of the park this season, taking over for Ludwig Göransson. So be sure to check out this collection of tracks as soon as you're able to. I know I'm very much looking forward to it this coming work week, as it will definitely hype me up for all the things and meetings that I've got going on. Additionally, again, you have probably heard in our preamble that we have a Patreon. And finally, we have our first patron. And as you may know if you've checked out our Patreon before, but we have various tiers, and basically at the $1 level and above, you get your name read on the podcast. So I want to welcome Rural Farm Boy to the Patreon community as our first patron. And if you want to join the Patreon too and see the various tiers that are available, that maybe you want to pledge your support to Force Ghost Conversations, there's a link, of course, in the episode description here for you to do so. You can have your name read on the show too, and depending on what level that you support at, you can get a ton of other Force Ghost Conversations goodies. So, extra podcast episodes, the chance to ask questions that will be answered on the show, the invitation to provide your own Star Wars, Lucasfilm, Indiana Jones, Willow stories to be read on the show. These are things that are all available to you so that you can become a part of the Force Ghost Conversations community yourself. So thank you, Rural Farm Boy, and welcome to the community. For those of you at home listening to the podcast, get ready because on the other side of this very short break, we'll be back to discuss The Mandalorian Season 3 finale episode, The Return. Stay tuned. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Holy cow, we have concluded another season of The Mandalorian, and I gotta tell you, it went fast. It went fast. It was amazing how quickly we've gotten through this journey. All the way back to March 1st. I mean, when you had this at the same time as Bad Batch, Star Wars Celebration just around the corner, new books, new announcements, the time just flew. And I gotta tell you, season 3 of The Mandalorian, in my opinion, was spectacular. I loved it. I'm definitely gonna go back and rewatch this season over and over again because I liked where they went with this season, the overall arc of it all, this return to Mandalore, to find home, to find community, to find a sense of understanding, of belonging, to come back together again, right? If you don't know where you come from, how do you know who you are? How can you start anew? And that was a big theme of this season. I know, perhaps to a fair criticism, right? People were expecting the Din Djarin and Grogu show where they go off and do adventures from week to week to week. That's okay. That's fine. That's you're allowed to have this opinion. But what the creators gave us, Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, Rick Famuyiwa, and of course the many directors that were involved over the course of this season, and writers too. I loved that we additionally got this idea of Mandalorians returning home, Mandalorians regrouping together, Mandalorians becoming one group again, fighting through these warring factions, the rise of Bo-Katan again, back to a state of prominence amongst the Mandalorian community. I loved all this stuff, and I hope that you did at home too, because we've certainly been singing the praises of this season over the past couple of weeks here. I want to start right there, kind of where we left off with last week's episode, the spies, which of course were a red herring. There were no other spies other than, of course, a Shadow Council, possibly, if you will, go that path with me. Elia Kane, whichever way you want to pronounce it, is certainly a spy, and they probably have other spies within the New Republic framework right now. You never know with the amnesty program, but it certainly is a scarlet letter on those who are a part of the amnesty program that want to rehabilitate themselves back into the New Republic. It's just, we certainly got caught up in the speculation of it all. I think that's pretty fair to say. I think the internet went rampant with it too, but that's kind of the fun of Star Wars. And it's okay that there weren't more spies, right? We probably unfairly put, maybe Axe Woves or the Armorer or maybe Bo-Katan even, some were speculating on, to think that they were potentially the other spies amidst this group here. But they weren't. They weren't. So it's an example of why you speculate responsibly. You have fun thinking, well, what could be? And then you don't get so bogged down into the actual what could be that you think that this is how it should be. And that's the only way it could be. Because that's dangerous. That's how you don't allow creators to create. You don't allow yourself to be amazed by what you see on screen. You're already solving the answer before you get the question. Or before you see the full picture. You're trying to figure out. And that's okay. Some people like playing that game. But there's also the dangerous side to that too, where you limit the creativity of others. And that's something that's important to think about as we go to future Star Wars content, as we go to future Lucasfilm content whatsoever, whether it be Indiana Jones, Willow, new projects that they take on in the future. Just remember that. It's okay to be speculative, but it's okay to not let that be the 100% definitive answer along the way. And I like that. I didn't want any of our characters to be a, a double agent, if you will. I don't want that. I want our heroes to be heroes. I have a very clear understanding of who's good, who's bad, who wants to be good, who wants to be bad. These are characters that, at the end of the day, so again, Star Wars is about these good and bad people making choices so that 12-year-olds can see this on the precipice of going out into the world and know what is right and wrong. That's pretty clear to me. The Mandalorians are clearly good here in the Empire. There's this remnant here in this community left on Mandalore is not. Is not. They're trying to create this super army that's taking the best of what Mandalore has to offer, what the Jedi have to offer, etc., and combining it together, what the Empire has too. They're creating these dark troopers, these Phase 2 dark troopers with Beskar armor. And you saw the clones. You saw that in this episode, the Moff Gideon clones that they're trying to infuse with the Force. And I was waiting. I was saying, I was thinking in my head here. You say it. Say midichlorians. Say it. When you're talking about infusing the Force blood, if you will, I'll just say, come on, say it. Say it, you cowards. Do it. Say midichlorians. I digress, though. One day it will be said again in the Star Wars galaxy. Mark my words, it will happen. So, of course, we got clarity on what are these cloning vats. Those weren't Snoke's. Those were more Moff Gideon's. Moff Gideon is running his own tirade over here. This own charade that he's got going on. Brennell Hux was saying that in the Shadow Council. He's like, what are you doing? I hear rumblings over there about what you've got concocting there, Moff Gideon. It sounds like you have a little bit of cloning too. Dr. Pershing's work and all that. Yes. He said, no, that's you. Project Necromancer's your line of work. So that must be what we're talking about. Exegol, the Emperor, all that stuff. But I guess what my question is here is this the end of Gideon? Yeah, you've seen the episode by this point. Again, I'm sorry, I didn't add a spoiler warning to this episode. If you haven't seen the episode, of course, you're fully indoctrinated now by this point by what I've said already. But maybe if you've gotten this far and you haven't, then what are you doing? Go pause this episode now. Go watch the episode on Disney Plus. Come right back. You know the drill by this point. I will say it's pretty hard for going back to the Gideon point, of course. It's pretty hard to survive that blast unless you've got like a Grogu shield around you, which is what Bo-Katan Din Djarin had. But is it the end of Gideon? Those clones are definitely done. I've seen the speculation online that Season 2 Gideon had a mustache. Season 3 Gideon does not have a mustache. Season 3 Gideon also has different color hair. Perhaps this is a clone Gideon. And the real Gideon is off elsewhere, Maybe. It's definitely some fair speculation. Again, speculating responsibly on that one. Hope you folks keeping your hearts and minds open to other possibilities there. I think it's the end of Gideon, personally. I will say I always like to see a body, just in case. But it was pretty desolate. The destruction of that cruiser in that area really did its toll. And again, if you don't have a Grogu shield around you using the Force, didn't look like much survived around that. So I think we might have seen the end of Moff Gideon here. I'm banking on that pretty hard. At least I'm moving forward in that I'm not going to sit and fully put my efforts into thinking that he somehow survived that. But it could be a possibility. I'm not throwing out there entirely that it's not. But for my money, I'm probably assuming that was the intent, was that we're not going to see Moff Gideon again. We'll move on to other storytelling. That was the importance of introducing the Shadow Council, that there are these larger looming threats out there, a Grand Admiral Thrawn, Captain Pelion, Brennel Hux, the First Order remnants are out there. It's happening. And we're going to get to that point one day, folks. We'll get to that later on, too. I mentioned at the preamble, or not necessarily the preamble, but the top of this episode here about the overall arc of this season was about moving forward from the past and coming together as Mandalorians underneath a different symbol, right? And that symbol being Bo-Katan. Now, the Darksaber in this episode was crushed. Moff Gideon literally had it in his hand and squeezed it. Darksaber's gone. The Darksaber is gone, folks. This powerful weapon, literally created by the mind of George Lucas himself. This important symbol of Mandalorian culture for all these years, but also represented a divisive nature of this community. And in fact, that probably hindered them. They had this story that they built up, this myth that whoever wields the Darksaber is the one worthy enough to lead, rather than by deeds, rather than by actions. I think it's kind of right up there with Duchess Satine, right? She wanted to lead her planet, her people, into a more pacifist route, rejecting that warrior-like heritage that they had before and moving towards something else. And now that the Darksaber is behind them, they can really reforge anew. And under this new leadership by Bo-Katan, where they are accepting and believing all different ideologies are possible to exist, to work together, to coexist at the same time. That's powerful, right? This is really the semblance of coming together as Mandalorians, as Bo-Katan says when she's fighting Moff Gideon at the end. We're stronger together. They're basically a new family, if you will, right? Grogu, Din Djarin, Bo-Katan, they all fight together, bringing different ideologies together underneath the way. And they're able to defeat Moff Gideon, this remnant empire group, this Praetorian guards, these Phase 2 Dark Troopers. They're able to overcome all these insurmountable odds. They do it together, and they each bring something different to the table. Din Djarin has, all the skills and prowess of a bounty hunter under his demeanor. Grogu, of course, Jedi skills, has the Force under his control. The IG-12 suit. Bo-Katan, her leadership capabilities, her ability to understand situations around her, to use the Darksaber, her war experience during the Clone Wars, all of that, and of course leading the planet during their civil war, their rebellion again, all that stuff that led to the initial Moff Gideon coming to the planet in the first place. All that comes together, and that's how they're able to rise up at the end of the day and defeat this powerful entity. And I found that really to be really exquisite, if you ask me. Right? Again, picture perfect showcasing of exactly what the season is trying to depict at the end of the day. The strength and unity, the power that they can have as one together. But really, what's next for Mandalore? And I think that's it right there. At the end of this episode, we saw them restarting the Forge. We saw that they are able to restart their traditions again. Clearly, in this episode, too, they can farm on the planet once more. Life can grow again. Everything's not absolutely turned to glass and desolate and poisonous, as they once believed. Mandalore can renew itself again underneath this new ideological pathway that they've set themselves on. And Bo-Katan is right to be at the front of this head. She's walking both ways. She's earned the respect of both the ones that take their helmets off and the ones that keep their helmets on. Now, I'm fascinated to see how they will do. I'm pulling for them. Things can change, of course. I'm hopeful that maybe this Mandalorian group will come into the fight when the Imperial remnants are making their stand, whatever this Dave Filoni-led film is going to be. I think that it's certainly a possibility, and I hope that we see them again. But they're going to be rebuilding their society. Not necessarily rebuilding, too, but forging anew. Right? They can take things that they liked from old Mandalore. Stories, belief systems, etc. But they can also change stuff that didn't work. And we've already seen that to this point. Whether it be fighting against each other, these warring factions, these differences of ideology, these putting down other people, literally sequestering them to different worlds and planets in the Mandalore system because of their belief system or their ideology. Now they found a home together. They're going to create a community, and they can do it together through democracy, through the ideals of a grand system. I think it's really powerful, and I love that they're going to be able to do this together. And something that really stuck out to me too in this episode was in that sequence where they are kind of doing the baptism in the mines of Mandalore. Grogu is officially brought into the way. He is brought in as a apprentice, formally, for Din Djarin. He's renamed as Din Grogu, and in the process of making him an apprentice, he is formally adopted by Din Djarin. I love it. Although as an audience, we've certainly, I think we would all probably say that there was this literal father-son dynamic between Grogu and Din Djarin. Definitely throughout, the end of season 1, all throughout season 2, and Book of Boba Fett in season 3 to this point. That was clear. They've made their lines, but there's something to be said about literally professing that and declaring it in the song, if you will, right? This legal document in a way of saying, like, this is my child, I am his father. Like, that's powerful. That's really powerful, especially as someone, like, in my experience, right? I have a stepfather who I didn't have to basically bring me into the fold, right, to accept me as part of his family, but he did so, and that's really powerful, and I appreciate that, and I love that. And again, it shows, like, more than words, another way, a physical profession of how much you care for somebody when you're willing to go in front of your belief system, your rituals, your traditions, and say, yes, this is my family right here, formally. That is an incredible moment, and it was emotional for me too, again, because I have a similar experience in my life about how you can be brought into this found family, literally forging itself as family at the end of the day. It's an incredible sequence, and I'm glad that now we got this sense of, Mandalorian apprentice. We're learning so much more about the culture itself too as we're going along. Now, Din and Grogu are told to go out into the universe to learn more about each other and to learn more about the way, to adventure, so he can forge the skills to learn about Mandalorian culture, to learn what it means to walk the way of the Mandalore. And that's really, the heading for season 4, frankly, at the end of all this. And that's the fun thing. We got, as much as we could, a happy ending in Star Wars, right? I know I've seen the jokes already. The Looney Tunes, Warner Brothers, that's all, folks. The way that it's, the circle closing at the end of it all. Especially as it showcases a little bit of Grogu before it fully cuts to black. Star Wars is not unoriginal to that before, so it's not the first time that a circle ending has ended something before. A New Hope's done it. Phantom Menace has done it. Force Awakens did it. It usually signifies the end of a first chapter, so maybe this is the end of a first chapter of everything, right? So look at Mandalorian season 1, season 2, Book of Boba Fett season 3. Of the Mandoverse, this might be the first chapter right there. So maybe if you look at it from that kind of point of view, Ahsoka perhaps starts at chapter 2. We have introduced a lot of these key players up to this point. We got our ending, right? And we have our literal heading for where we're going from the armor. Din Djarin meets up at the end with Carson Teva, and they're going to have their continuing adventures where they go out, protect the Outer Rim, hunt down Imperial remnants, and serve basically as a New Republic contractor, taking up these odd jobs that they know that the New Republic isn't or can't go to, because Carson Teva is frankly the only one raising these alarms. He's saying something's going on out here, but the New Republic's trying to put a government together. It's hard to do that to begin with, let alone protect an entire galaxy from all the different various threats out there. You saw how powerful the Shadow Council is. They know what they're doing. They have a pretty solid plan in place about waiting for Grand Admiral Thrawn's return and how to do that at the right time, etc. Oof. So that means they're relying on characters like Din Djarin and other, probably other contracted bounty hunter folks like that to have these grand adventures, serve on these missions, selectively, of course, in terms of, in Din Djarin's case, going out into the galaxy and helping people in need. I love that. I love that he's doing this honorable way of going about it to showcase that to, his son now, Grogu, Din Grogu. He's got a new name. I guess that also shows that Din is technically his last name and Djarin is his first name, I guess. I don't know. We're learning things about Mandalore culture as we go along here, folks. He didn't get a name such as like the Armor, which we don't know what her name is. Which makes you wonder, like Paz Vizsla. Like obviously, I think Vizsla is his last name, Clan Vizsla. We know that. Bo-Katan Kryze. Kryze is the family name there. I don't know. Maybe it's because they are foundlings that they get the last name first. I don't know. We'll have to find out. This is again, we're learning things about Mandalore culture that we've never had before, and now we're getting that in a totally new fashion. So I'm very, very excited to see where that goes. And again, season 4, whenever that comes out, I mean, Jon Favreau's hard at work writing it. If he hasn't completely finished it all already, I know it hasn't been officially announced that a season 4 is coming, but you got to think that it is certainly on the docket for Lucasfilm at this point. This is kind of almost going to be that New Republic, Rangers of the New Republic show, and I think so too. And instead, take those stories, put it into the idea of what season 4 of The Mandalorian is, while he's tasked with going out into the galaxy and doing these grand adventures. Kind of makes sense at the end of the day. We don't need an extra show to do that. We've already got so many other shows going on in the Mandoverse right now. Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett. Let's see where it all plays out. Of course, it's all going to culminate into this grand Dave Filoni-led film that we learned about at Star Wars Celebration. But time will tell how it all comes to pass. I mean, we've got 2 more shows this coming year, so Ahsoka's really going to pick up these next threads yet. We're going to learn. I imagine we're going to learn about the more about the Shadow Council. We're going to see Grand Admiral Thrawn's return, of course. Lars Mikkelsen playing that character, and Skeleton Crew is going to pick up on those threads too. And then from there, who knows? We'll have to see what gets announced as a second season 2, perhaps. Are there new shows coming out in this playground, if you will, the sandbox of this Star Wars era, this corner of the Star Wars galaxy, in this part of the timeline? So, of course, Andor is still doing its thing, at least for one more season. We're only getting one more season. We know where that's going. And then the Acolyte's going to start. And then from there, who knows? So we'll have to see where the threads get picked up in Ahsoka and how the audience responds to it. And I think, based off of that trailer, I think we're going to have a good time with Ahsoka. Very excited for that. And that probably might be one of my most anticipated Star Wars things coming out very soon here. Finally, the last thing that I wanted to touch upon as we conclude our Force Ghost Conversations discussions around The Mandalorian Season 3 is we got not only the return of Mandalorians to Mandalore, we got the return of kind of these Imperial Remnants groups as the Shadow Council. We got to see that return a little bit here. We got the return of IG-11. And in true fashion of making something that makes sense, is that IG-11, the restored IG-11, the renewed IG-11, is now the Marshal of Navarro, serving a purpose, serving the people of this community. It's brilliant that a droid is in charge of security in this place, right? Something that doesn't need to sleep. Something that can work literally 24/7. Only needs to charge every now and then, but can still be active while charging. Or can get off the charge, take an oil bath, whatever. What do you need to do? And is deadly. And can take a few hits. isn't like a person, right? Isn't like, unfortunately Cobb Vanth took a hit and now he's in a back to tank. We'll see how that plays out. um, I think that was just brilliant. And again, Taika Waititi back in the Star Wars fold. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see where this character goes, and potential season 4. Because we're never not going to return to Navarro. That's home base now for Din Djarin. He's got his plot of land. Him and Grogu. They're going to come home. They're going to rest their head. They're going to take their adventures out in the galaxy and the Outer Rim, and then come back. And that's great. We got a conclusion to this kind of first chapter of the Mandoverse, in my opinion. And I loved it. It was a very great, happy ending. We got our heroes looking off in the sunset, literally Din Djarin on his front porch there, watching Grogu play in the little pond that they've got there on their plot of land. It's beautiful. It's poetic. It's how you want your heroes after a grand journey to just kind of lay low, rest, recoup, and we'll see where they go in future adventures. But that's really all that I had for this episode. I loved it. I thought it was fun. I thought the action was incredible. Loved the why of it all. I loved how it all tied together. Rick Famuyiwa did a great job tying these last 2 episodes in. And I'm just looking forward to more stories in this universe. I think there's a lot more to tell in this, obviously, because we're heading towards that climactic movie event. But for now, that's all of my thoughts and ramblings on The Mandalorian Season 3. What did you all think of this incredible climactic final episode? I think for some, the discourse is out there. Maybe you didn't like it. Maybe you didn't like how it ended. Maybe you thought some parts were goofy. That's all fine and dandy. Let's have a conversation about that. Be sure to hit us up on our social media channels. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Hive. I think I said them all. Hit us up on all those channels, right? We'd love to continue the conversation with you all, to continue growing the proverbial seats around the Forest Ghost Conversations campfire. Let's talk about it. What are you most excited for in future seasons? What do you think about what may tie into Ahsoka? I think there's a lot of questions out there available. Where's Boba Fett at this point, right? All that stuff is on the table, and let's have some fun conversations about where the speculation could go in regards to all this. So be sure to hit us up on our social channels for all that stuff. Of course, we'll be back next Sunday with a brand new episode. I think Star Wars Jedi Survivor comes out next Friday, so maybe that episode will be about that. Perhaps we'll do some look-ins at Vision Seat Volume 1 episodes. Maybe we'll look back at some stuff that we haven't been able to do yet in regards to Star Wars stuff. So maybe Tales of the Jedi, which we unfortunately haven't had a chance to talk about yet. The Obi-Wan Kenobi Return documentary, A Jedi's Return. Haven't had a chance to take a deep dive into that one yet. So maybe we'll do some of that as we have this fun little intermediate period between now and May 4th, where, of course, Young Jedi Adventures and Visions Volume 2 will premiere. So this is a very exciting time for Star Wars. Of course, I've been getting back into the High Republic readings myself personally. So I don't know if I'll do episodes on those, because it's hard to do episodes on books, if you ask me, or at least I'm not sure I feel confident enough to do episodes on books, because there's so many details in those. But I'm having a blast with that, and I hope you're able to pick up on the High Republic as we head into Phase 3 coming next fall, which is very exciting for all that. So yeah, so be sure to look out for the new episodes in your podcast feeds next week. Of course, be sure to subscribe, rate, review the podcast on your listening sites of choice. Share the episodes with your friends. Share it on your social media channels. The word of mouth is always great for helping to spread the great work that we're doing here on Force Ghost Conversations. And again, if you want to support us through other means, we have our Patreon site, which again, be sure to check out the link in the episode description where we have the various tiers listed. And you can see if there's a place or a pledge tier that you want to support at. We really appreciate that. So thank you for your continued support of Force Ghost Conversations through that means, for those of you who are patrons. Finally, we have our TeePublic store, which is, of course, where you can buy Force Ghost Conversations merchandise, whether it be t-shirts, hoodies, sweatpants, pillowcases, pillows itself, I think, phone cases. All that stuff is on that site, and they run deals frequently. So be sure to check out that site, our TeePublic store, if you will. Just search Force Ghost Conversations and you'll find us there. So with that, folks, I hope that you had a wonderful time. Go back, rewatch The Mandalorian Season 3. Let's have fun discussions about it, of course, because The Mandalorian Conversations will not stop just because the season is over. And until then, we'll be back very soon, folks, with a new episode. May the Force be with you. Take care.